I'm Allison Watt. We can kind of divide the activity that we're doing today into three parts: tools, techniques, and mindset. So the tools and techniques are going to be creating an abstract process, an abstract painting. And I like to work in abstracts because it helps us just work with our materials. So, this is a very mixed group, and some of you work in abstract, some of you work in more representational work. But I think that the materials that we're going to be working with, the techniques, you can take and apply to lots of different kinds of work. So, as far as the mindset is don't be afraid to lose. So don't be too concerned with your product too early on. And that allows us to kind of relax into the process, get in touch with our intuitive self. And that helps us respond to the work and figure out what the work needs as it evolves. So that's why the main part of this exercise is to keep you going through several layers. So let's have a look at, I'm going to switch my camera around and I'm going to start working with my hands with the materials. Here's my notes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is create what I call an active surface here. This will be in better focus when there's something for the camera to look at. And the first thing that I want to do, this is our first layer. So here's my gessoed paper taped off into 4 pieces. And the reason that I like to tape off, I know some of you have done this perhaps with other instructors, that it helps us to not focus too much on our it helps us unfocus on creating a working composition too early on. And so we just get to have a little fun. We move through these different sections, and it's always fun to take off the tape. So what I'm going to do first is introduce some dark value. And as soon as I do that, this is a Pitt Artist pen. Now, as I do this, understand you don't have to do exactly what I'm doing. And I don't expect you to paint like me. But here are just some ideas for you, which is what this week's exercise is all about. So I'm just really kind of randomly putting some black in here with my Pitt Pastel pen, and it's archival. So it's an ink-based pen, and they're kind of fun. And I'm just getting the dark in. I'm not really sure, I'm not setting up a visual language yet. I'm just putting in some activity. So that gets, all of a sudden, it gives us two ends of the value scale, black and white. So that's a good place to start. And the other way that you can put in black, if you have some of your favorite mark makers, I like these charcoal pencils. So I'm just mark making now. We're going to be talking about mark making in our second session. It isn't? I've got my assistant Lynn here having a look at the feed on Facebook. I'm hoping it's coming through for you. Sorry for this. I'm just checking the chat here to make sure that
Is it under
everybody...
events? Is that what should be? No, it should be under. It should be live.
Sorry, everybody. Just checking a few things on here. So I hope you've got sound. Maybe you could just drop in the comments if you are having any trouble. Anyway, don't worry about if you're not getting a great feed. This will be recorded and up on the Facebook site very soon, usually within an hour. So I'm going to continue on here. The other way to put dark in very quickly is with I like to work with heavy body paint, and then use just a tool like a squeegee or a credit card and pull it through, and then that gives us some really good darks. And I'm trying not to put too much dark in because I want to create lights as well. So what I love to do at this point too is interact with what I put down. Sometimes you can spray and lift. Until it dries, you have a little bit of a window to interact with it. I really love the paper towel kind of stippling that it creates. It's almost like a kind of a mark making. So what do we do next? So I guess this would be now, we're already into 3 layers, but I consider putting the dark in maybe 1 layer. We just put it in different ways. So then I would like you to take something, and this is in the notes I sent you, take something that you can print with. I got this strange article just around our house. I think it was from a how to sail book. So these are little sailboats. And I'm going to print with it. So I'll take my, I like to use just wax paper for temporary palettes. And I'm going to print, I've got a lot of dark in here, so maybe I'll print with white. So I'll get a little bit of fluid white. And I like to use a brayer for printing. You can use, this is a hard brayer, but you can use just a foam brayer too. A cheap foam brayer. So that's a fluid paint. And I'll print right into some of these darks. So the idea is to let the different layers interact with each other. This is also now introducing a visual language. So these are kind of little arch shapes. There's some arrows, like here. You can see the shapes that are starting to emerge here. So as that happens, as you print, you'll sort of ask yourself, what are the visual languages that are emerging through the stencil or the textural surface that you're integrating into your work. So, you know, I could print all over with that. I could also put some dark on it and print it so that it's dark over light. And so with our visual language, we've been having a discussion about this on my art play site. We do, when we have a visual language, we work with it in lots of different ways, and that creates interest and excitement in the painting. So visual language of these, say a circle, could be dark on light, light on dark, hollow circles, circles that we just draw with lines or score. So it could be just a piece of a circle, which is a curve. You know, you take your visual language and think about it. Turn it upside down, you know, turn it inside out, do lots of different things with it. So you can see I quite like these forms that have emerged in the printing, and to me they aren't boats, they're more like arches. So if we take that a little further on, here's an example of when I prepped here. One of the things I like to do is to mask. So this section here I've masked with drawing gum. So this is my drawing gum. I really like this PBO drawing gum. I use it with all different kinds of media. It's usually just used for watercolor, but I like to use it with acrylic too, and in creating these active surfaces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my transparent over this, because one of the things that I asked for you to bring to this exercise is black, white, some mark making tools, and a transparent. So I'm using phthalo blue, and here's the phthalo blue here already that I've prepared on one of these squares. And that one I'll tell you how I treated that particular square. At this point I'm going to work in the squares independently, because I'm going to show you some different techniques. But well, what I'll do is I've put some drawing gum on there, and I'll show you in another one how I did that, just because drawing gum is such a fun tool. So this particular drawing gum is very fluid. It's just slightly blue, so you can see it when it goes on, but then it's kind of hard to see once it dries. But that's kind of fun too. So I'm thinking about my visual language of arches here. And as I said, you don't have to do this exactly as you work through this exercise. You can, obviously you'll have different visual languages. You don't have to use drawing gum. These are just tools that I'm showing you. So I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to add the phthalo blue to this one where the drawing gum is dry. So just get another palette. So this time I'm using a heavy body paint, and just going to spread it out there with the brayer. But I'm going to actually apply it with a brush. So I'm just wetting my brush. So there's the phthalo blue, and a very fluid formula, like a fluid phthalo blue or a liquid or an ink, would also work here, because this is a layer that we want to keep really, really transparent. So I'm going to let Lynn dry that for me, and while she does that, I'll just talk to you about some of the different formula of paints. So this one is also phthalo blue, but it's a high flow acrylic paint, and it's really, really intense. I have a video up on my YouTube channel that talks about the differences between the different types of acrylic paint. So it's very, very liquid and very intense. And you can also get the fluid acrylics, and they're kind of in between. So this is actually phthalo green. The phthalos are very transparent, as are the quins. So I like to use them when I need a really thin, transparent layer. The phthalos are a good choice. So that's the fluid phthalo green. And then, of course, the last thing are the inks. So this is a turquoise ink. Actually, I'll show you this one, which is more like the phthalo. This is a marine blue. And they are also, they're more fluid than the high flow, but also very intense. So these fluid formulas are great because if you want a fluid type of paint, it's not like thinning down a heavy body paint. They're really just packed full of paint. So there's a lot of paint packed into a volume. Like a cc of the paint has got a lot of pigment packed into it. Okay, Lynn, that should be good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
There's some bolts on there that are not.
That's
quite
okay.
right.
That's all right. So here's the piece that I just put the drawing gum on, and I'm just going to pull it off with my fingers. So I love working with drawing gum because it does introduce this kind of random element. It's an element of surprise, and I always really like surprises. So now we're into about the fourth layer here. And I want to show you how I did this one, this square, because this is also just a great way to interact with what we've got there already. I'm going to turn this around. So this is also a type of masking I'm going to show you, but it's masking with hard masks, and this is just a piece of paper. And I'm going to just cut some pieces out of it, maybe in these, thinking again about my visual language of these arches or boats. And you can just lay them down over the surface. Here's both positive and negative pieces. And I'm going to get my phthalo blue paint again. I am using the heavy body, but for this, it would be great to have a fluid phthalo blue. But I'm just thinning down my phthalo blue with water. And I can just pull it over. And let those pieces of paper act as masks. So one of the things that happens when we create these very active surfaces is that you can have a lot of small elements distributed all over the place. And so it's nice to have ways to pull areas together. And then what you start to get is, this is layer 4, I guess, you start to get all these layers interacting. So now we get the transparent blue over the white, for instance. So those are, that's 4 layers, and I could carry on, and as I hope you will when you do this for yourself, one of the next steps would be to go into our paints, and we have carbon black, white, titanium white. I'm using a fluid formula for the titanium white. Phthalo blue. And that's it, right? We just have white, black, and a transparent. But we can make some great mixes with that. So surprisingly, actually this has still got a bit of marine blue in it, this brush. So I'm going to add some white. Obviously we can make, if we add white to the carbon black, we can make all kinds of, just put some white paper under here so you can see that better. All kinds of neutrals, right? And we can push that into a very dark neutral or into very pale neutral. But if we add the blue, we get these beautiful blue grays too. And that's true with any transparent. You'll get these really, really nice mixes with the blacks and whites. And we can again pull those through a lot of different values. So you can actually make pretty interesting paintings with just black, white, and then one other color. So the next step, next layers, I could reprint. I'll just put this on with a brush. Again, we're playing with our visual language by printing it in a different color. It's not very, let's get it a little whiter. It's not showing up very well. So we're printing that in a lighter color. A brayer works better for that. And I'll just grab my brayer and show you that idea again. So if we print into some of the darkness, it'll show up better, maybe. We could also print that as a positive form, because so far we've been printing it as a negative form. So let's print it as a positive form. So I'm just brushing inside the stencil. Like that. So now things are starting to get much more interesting because we've built up more layers. And I would start to, as I worked through this, integrate some more of those neutrals and tinted neutrals, tinted with the phthalo blue. And maybe, at some point you could also just do some painting with your brush and push in some really opaque color. Paint out some of the activity, and I always like to scratch back into it, etc. So the take-home message is 7 layers at least, and these are just a few of the techniques and tools that you can use. So when you get some images, I would really love it if you could post those onto our Facebook page, Playdates page, and then during our Zoom discussion, we'll have a chance to actually look at some of those images and chat about what people's experiences were doing 7 layers. And of course, feel free to do more if you like. And of course, the Facebook page is also a great place to just chat with each other. It's a real, these pages can really create community. And if you have any questions that don't get answered by Mary Jo in the chat bar here, just pop them onto the Facebook page.